So good morning everybody, welcome for our lesson today, and we still continue with our topic political systems and organizations. Then we talked about very many things. We looked at the formation of some political parties in 1990s. Then also we talked about how independence came about, talk about Mau Mau movement. We had also Legico and so on. So today we want to look at the contribution of prominent leaders in Kenya. Contribution of prominent Kenyan leaders. So we want to look at some of the Kenyan leaders and their contribution to the Republic of Kenya. Though some of them have passed away, but we shall look at them because they left legacy behind, very many things they have done for the country. Now, we shall start with the Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. The original name of the Jomo Kenyatta is called Johnston Kamau Muigai. That's the original name. Jomo is just a nickname which was given to him, but it became very famous across the world and even across the continent. That is why it's called Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Johnston Kamau, was born in Gatundu in 1889. So you can see he was born some years back. And then in 1952, we say that there was what we call state of emergency following the activities of Mau Mau movement. So there was declaration of state of emergency by Sir Evelyn Bering, who was the governor by then. So he declared the state of emergency. So 1952, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was arrested alongside with other members. We call them the Kapenguria Six. You remember them? Paul Ngei, Pildat Kakia, Kunga Rumba, Fred Kubai. Then also talk about Ocheng Oneko. So he was arrested in 1952 during the declaration of state of emergency by Sir Evelyn Bering. Then he was released in 1961. This is from the pressure by the political leaders, especially the KANU members who wanted him to be released after the first multi-party election, which was held in 1961. So he was released in 1961 from the prison, that is August. And then when Kenya caught internal self-rule, we call it independence, in 1963, Kenyatta became the first Prime Minister of Kenya. So the first Prime Minister of Kenya is Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. That is 1963, when Kenya got what you call internal self-rule or independence. Remember, since the independence, we had only two prime ministers. That is Mzee Jomo Kenyatta in 1963. Then in 2008, where we had creation of a position of the prime minister between Kibaki and Raila. So the second prime minister of Kenya was Raila Amolo Odinga. So we had only two prime ministers in the independence. Then president, he became also the president in 1964. This is when Kenya became a republic on 12th December. So Kenyatta became the first president or the first black African in Kenya to become the president of the Republic of Kenya, where the post of governor was abolished, replaced by the president, the head of state. Then also there was a formation of an executive government with an elected president. So that is 1964. Then in 1978, he died. So Mzee Jomo Kenyatta died in 1978 with a known disease. So he died in 1978. That's Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. That's all about Jomo Kenyatta, but we want to look at the contributions. What did he contribute to the country or the continent? So the country of Kenya fought for freedom. He was a freedom fighter. Remember, we have said they fought for independence until they were arrested in 1952. Remember, like Kapenguria 6, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was there. So he was a freedom fighter. He fought for freedom of African people. That's what we mean. He was a diplomat. So diplomat is a person who brings about peace. He negotiates for diplomacy in a peaceful way. So Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was a man who negotiated, who brought people together. So that's why we say he was a diplomat. Then freedom fighter, we have said, he promoted development through what we call the Harambee spirit. So Mzee Jomo Kenyatta introduced what we call Harambee, the Harambee spirit. He used to say Harambe. Then people say Nyayo. Though Nyayo is a philosophy established by Moi, but Harambe philosophy was introduced by Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, this philosophy, Harambe philosophy. We say that philosophy is just an idea or an ideology of something or any given organization. So this one, the main aim of Harambe was to promote national development politically, economically, and even socially. That's why you're talking about development. So that's all about Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So we shall look at the next member. We call him Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, he was born in 1910 in Nyamira, Siaya County. So that's Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Then elected in the Legico in 1956. You remember what happened, the election of members to the Legico around 1956-57 Apple. So some members were elected to the Legico. And we say Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was elected, was also one of them. Then also he participated in Lancaster House Conference. You remember the Lancaster House Conference in London? Lancaster House Conference. And we said Lancaster House Conference was participated or was attended by both KADU and KANU members. So this one was one of the members of KANU who attended this conference. And this conference was talking about, they were mainly discussing the independent constitution. The constitution which will bring the country to independence. So Mzee Jaramogi Oginga was among them, those members. Then first Vice President of Kenya, and also was made the Minister for Home Affairs. When Mzee Jomo Kenyatta became the President of the Republic, that's 1964, he appointed Mzee Jaramogi Oginga as the first Vice President. So the first Vice President of Kenya was called Mzee Jaramogi Oginga. Then he formed NTP, National Democratic Party, then fought Forum of Restoration Democrat. Then these are the political parties who formed by this man, mainly to fight for multipartyism, especially the fourth was formed by this man to fight for multipartyism. And we said multipartyism is where we have many political parties in Kenya operating or in a government. So he became the opposition leader, just like his son Raila. So he was the father of opposition. In fact, he's called the father of opposition, this man called Jaramogi Oginga. So then we want to look at the contribution of Jaramogi Oginga. Number one, he was a freedom fighter. We have said he was elected to the Legico to fight for the freedom and for the welfare of the African people. Then also we are talking about he participated in Lancaster House Conference, where they discussed about the independent constitution which could liberate or free the African people from being exploited by the Europeans. So that it is. He secured scholarship for the young people abroad. When you talk about scholarship, then we are looking at young people going to learn abroad in European countries. So this man he secured scholarship for young people abroad who could go and learn there to acquire more skills. That's what you call the scholarship. And then he was a Democrat. He believed in democracy, this man. He believed in democracy where he could fight for people to have democracy. And we know very well we're in a republic with democracy. People will live with peace and they can make a decision without any interference. So that is Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And then another member was called Daniel Arap Moi. Daniel Arap Moi was born in 1924 in Sajo, Baringo County. So that's Daniel Moi, 1924, in Sajo village, that is Baringo County. Then 1957, he was elected to the Legico to represent Rift Valley region. We said he represented Rift Valley region. So remember that. Then we said he was among the members who formed KADU. We said 1960, after the formation of KANU, some members of the minority communities, they came together, people like Ronald Ngala from the coast, Masinda Mudro from the western part, Then we had also Daniel Arap Moi from the Rift Valley region. They came together to form KADU as an opposition party which could criticize the government and put the government on toes to make sure that the influence of big communities in Kanu like Luo and Kikuyu does not exploit the small communities that were in Kenya. Then he was the third vice president of Kenya for around 12 years. So he became the third vice president of Kenya for 12 years. Then after the death of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta in 1978, he took over as the second president of Kenya, and he ruled for 24 years. He's the longest serving president in the Republic of Kenya. So he ruled for 24 years up to around 2002 when Kibaki took over the leadership. So that is Mzee Moi. Then I think he died in 1920, just recently. We buried him and it's home. So that is Daniel Arap Moi. Contributions. He was a political leader. What do we mean by political leader? We can see that in 1957, he was elected to the Legico to fight for the freedom of Africans on the ground. We also see they coming together to form KADU, mainly to fight for the welfare of the minority communities in Kenya. So he was a political leader. He advocated for the interest of the minority. That's what you're talking about, KADU. The main role of KADU was to advocate for the interest of minority communities or the small communities in Kenya. That's what you're talking about. Mzee Moi was among them. He was also elected to the Legico. When you look at the minority, the African people were also suffering. So he also a man who advocated for that. He was a peacemaker. He negotiated between communities whenever there was war. He also brought people together who disagreed. That is what you call the peacemaker. He was a man who liked peace. That is Mzee Daniel Arap Moi. Then he promoted unity. He promoted unity. He promoted unity. He promoted unity through what we call, we have what we call the philosophy called Nyayo, was to promote unity development and across the country. Nyayo philosophy was established by Mzee Daniel Moi around 1978 to establish also, to make sure that all members of the community, they live together. We have development socially, politically, and even we have economically. Then he promoted what we call development in the country. We have what we call Nyayo T-zone. So Moi established those zones to make sure that people also plant trees, and also they protect the soil and so on. So that is about Daniel Arap Moi. And then we have another leader called Professor Wangari Maathai. Professor Wangari Maathai was born in Tetu in Nyeri County in 1940. He campaigned for conservation of environment all over the world. He was called the mother of environment. Wangari Maathai believed in environment through planting of trees, that when you cut one tree, then make sure you plant 2 of them. He went to an extent and said, when I die, you don't need to cut trees to make a coffin for me. Instead, just bury me like that, or let my body be consumed by fire. Because he believed in the environment, something very important for human life and anything that exists in the world. So she was a very good mother in terms of conserving environment across the world. Contribution of Professor Wangari Maathai, he conserved environment. He's called the ambassador of environment. So as I've said, he advocated for people to conserve environment. He advocated for people not to cut trees. He also advocated for herself not to be buried in a coffin, because that is destruction of forests. Then Crusader of women's rights. We know very well that women, they have their rights, which should be observed by constitution and also anywhere in the world. So this Professor Wangari Maathai, he really fought for the women's rights across the Eastern Africa region and even across the continent of Africa and the world as a whole. Then we have she was a Democrat and a political leader. And when we talk about Democrat, we are talking about democracy. Wangari Maathai are some of the members who are fighting for democracy in the Republic of Kenya. And we have said where we have democracy, we elect our leaders. We have freedom of expression. We are not mistreated by any political party or any individual or any power according to the constitution. So this mama, she really fought for democracy, and she was also a very good political leader. She was an education instructor, and a researcher. She was also a lecturer at one of the universities, and she held a faculty in the Department of Veterinary. And when we talk about veterinary, we are talking about the field that deals with the research in terms of treating animals. So this mama held that position, was also a lecturer in that field. So she was an instructor, lecturer. Then human rights activists. Human rights activists are those people who defend the human rights whenever they are violated. We have seen in many countries where you see maybe police brutality are crossing the border, where people are being beaten by the police, the army. So the the human rights activists will stand up to fight for the rights of the people. And one of them was Mother Karua, or not Mother Karua, but sorry, Professor Wangari Maathai. So she won the World Nobel Prize in terms of conserving environment. That is the year 2004. So she was given what we call the World Nobel Prize because she was the ambassador of conserving environment. And then lastly, she died on 25th September 2011. So that's Wangari Maathai. So those are the prominent Kenyan leaders. So make sure you know more about Jomo Kenyatta. Just read this, then understand more about Jomo Kenyatta, where he was born, what happened to him, because you have said he was arrested, he was released in which year, he became the president which year, he ruled maybe for how many years, he died in which year. Then also, you also look at the contribution of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. We have said all of them, so they are here. Make sure also you read more on the other books. We have also Jaramogi Oginga, the second vice president of Kenya. He also participated in multipartyism, all of those. He also formed some of the political parties like Ford. Then we have the others. He also died in 1994. Then also we have looked at contributions. He was a Democrat, secured scholarship abroad for the young people to come and learn and so on. We have also Daniel Arap Moi. Also we have talked about him, elected in the legislature. We have Kadu, and also was a member, was a vice president for around 12 years, president. Then we have the contributions here. Then lastly, I think the last one was Professor Wangari Maathai. We said he was an environmental conservative. So he really conserved environment. He was ambassador for environment conservation and so on. Fought for women's rights and so on. I think we shall have question below that video. And we shall meet the next lesson. Thank you.